This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Broadcasting live from the Capital OTB studios, this is Racing Across America with Seth.
Good morning. Welcome to Racing Across America on this Saturday morning. I'm Seth Merrow. Thanks for joining us. Want to get right into things. We actually pre-taped our interviews on Friday because we're going to be going a little bit later on Saturday. I'll get to that in a second. So wanted to pre-tape the show so I get a little bit of a later start actually coming in live on Saturday. But fun show. Coming up a little bit later on, Jon White from Santa Anita talking about what is a great stakes card out at Santa Anita with a lot of Breeders' Cup potential there. So Jon White hits on the Santa Anita card. And then there's a fun card at Delaware Park today. Delaware Owners Day. They have 6 stakes, pretty big fields in most of them. So I thought I would tout that a little bit just to alert people to a day where I think there'll be some value and some fun opportunities on the stakes action at Delaware Park. So Chris Sobocinski from Delaware will join us as well a little bit later on. Let me just quickly hit on the promos. As I mentioned earlier, a little bit later today, from about 4 to 8 this afternoon, I'll be in the studio with a bankroll, and I'll be joined by Mike Callahan. Team selected already, but do join in this afternoon as we'll be giving out the bankroll plays, which maybe will allow you to play along with us or give you some ideas for some of your plays. But we will be focusing on Santa Anita and that great stakes card they have today. So between about 4 and 8, we'll have those bankroll plays a little bit later on this afternoon. Also a bankroll tomorrow focusing on the Gulfstream Park Rainbow Mandatory Payout. I'll have $250 to play tomorrow at Gulfstream on that mandatory pay. Should be a lot of fun, and it should be a lot of money in the pool. So hopefully we make a lot of dough for the bankroll team and hit that Rainbow Six. But we'll be taking a swing tomorrow. Tomorrow, Sunday, also, don't forget, it's an NFL Sunday at the Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue in Albany. Come on down, put your name on the squares, and maybe you can win a jersey. You can have a lot of fun, though, just watching the football action, all the racing action as well. Maybe grab a little lunch while you're here also. 711 Central Avenue in Albany. Throughout the NFL season, football Sundays. Don't forget, when you come in, you have to wear the mask and socially distance and whatnot. But there's plenty of seating available. When you sit down, you can take down the mask. Just the same rules that are in play at stores and restaurants and whatnot. But we'd love to have you here. Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue in Albany. All right. We had a full show with a couple of interviews, so we'll get to it. We'll take a break first, but we'll come back in a minute or so with our friend Jon White from Santa Anita. A little bit later on, Chris Sobocinski from Delaware Park, both with some big stakes days. So up next, Jon White and Santa Anita right after this break.
Where's the best place to find your favorite teams, your favorite food, daily drink specials, and wagering on live horse racing? Legends Field Sports Bar, 711 Central Avenue, Albany. Get your game on day or night with 75 flat-screen TVs, tournament-style pool tables, a private banquet room, and live horse racing. So if someone asks you, where's the best sports bar in the capital region? Tell them Legends Field Sports Bar, inside the Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue, Albany.
What if there was a way to become a better horse player, to have a better knowledge of the game, to be more successful? What if there were a way to take what you've learned, what you know, and make better decisions, better choices? In horse racing, knowledge is a powerful tool. Race results and replays, past performances and live streaming, wagering from all your digital devices. Capital OTB. Become a better horse player.
Birdstone is an outside front. They're coming down to the finish. Can Smarty Jones hold on? Here comes Birdstone. Birdstone surges past Birdstone.
to be joined now by our friend Jon White from Santa Anita, a big Saturday card with lots of Breeders' Cup implications down the road. Jon, good morning.
Good morning, Seth. How are you?
Very good. As I say, I'm looking forward to a big card. And before we get into races specifically, morning line odds maker, some challenges on the stakes card as far as the morning line?
Well, the morning line is always a challenge, no matter what race or what day or what have you. And you do the best you can, and you just hope that you'll get as close as you can. I'm proud. I think one of the most important aspects of making the morning line is correctly forecasting the favorite, because so many horse players these days want to try to beat the favorite, and if they can look at the morning line and trust that they more often than not I have the right favorite, it helps them in terms of getting a head start on the card. And at every meet that I've been making the morning line at Santa Anita, and I've been doing it for over a decade now, I've never been less than 70% in terms of correctly forecasting the favorite in a race.
Yeah, very good. I have said it before. I do not envy the morning line odds maker, but you do a great job out there at Santa Anita, and I think you've landed on the right favorite that I think it will be tough for people to beat in the Chandelier. That's going to be race number 3 on Saturday. Short field of 2-year-old fillies going a mile and a 16th. We're going to pull up the Delmar Debutante. Number 4 will be Princess Noor for Bob Baffert, and it just looks like she is going to be very tough in here. As I say, it's a field of 5, but I'm a buyer's guy. They're a tool in my toolbox, and I say when I handicap during the day in here, some races you just land on a horse that has a buyer's edge, and that looks like the case with Princess Noor. What are your thoughts on the Chandelier?
Well, she sold for well over $1 million, so she came to the races with kind of a gaudy reputation, and I had heard through the grapevine that she was a very talented filly before her first race. And this is a filly that is extremely fast. That's why she sold so much as a 2-year-old. She had worked extremely fast, but she had done it in very impressive fashion. And you mentioned the buyers. You know, I've been an advocate for years that I wish that the buyer people would do what like Timeform has done through the years, and that is when you get a situation like Princess Noor where she ran a 76 buyer in her first start, that really doesn't do her performance justice. If you look at the comment, it says in hand, and that is correct, because he never really let her run. And what I would advocate for the buyer people in a situation like that is to put a plus.
Yeah.
Because I think that was a 76 plus. And we come back in the Delmar Debutante, and she again is a heavy odds-on favorite. And there was a controversial incident at the start. She took a left-hand turn at the start, and there was bumping, but I personally thought the stewards made the correct decision in terms of I did not think that the bumping in any way denied someone the opportunity for a better placing in the race, but it was kind of a messy start. There's no question about it. But the most important aspects of her performance were 2. Number 1, she was able to sit third early, and that's extremely important since she'll be stretching out from the 7 furlongs to a mile and a 16th in the Chandelier. So it's not like she needs the early lead to win a race. That's extremely important to prove that. And the other thing is, again, if you watch it, Victor Espinoza doesn't let her run again down the lane. And so it's another race that I would give her a 79 plus. So she's strictly the one to beat. There's no secret about that. I know that Bob Baffert has always felt Illumination is a very nice filly and might do well around 2 turns. But I don't see how she's going to get much play in the wagering because she was 7-1 in the Delmar Debutante, and she ended up showing early speed in that race. I don't think that's her preferred style. I think she would prefer to come from off the pace as well. I think Saez will do that with her. And I think she might have a better chance than it would appear off of the Delmar Debutante. So I wouldn't take her too lightly in this spot. And Make Mischief is a nice filly coming in for Mark Casse, who is one of my favorite trainers. I think he's just a tremendous horseman, very appropriately inducted into the American Racing Hall of Fame this year to go along with his Canadian Hall of Fame membership. And Make Mischief should not be taken too lightly. But as you say, Seth, Princess Noor off the numbers, but more than that, as visually as impressive as she's been, she's going to be very tough to beat in this race. She's going to be a very short price. I made her 2-5.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it. I mean, she just stands out in here off the page. The only hope that folks may have to beat her is the 2 turns. Somebody really appreciates it. Maybe she doesn't like it too much. But I will say, I like your idea of the plus sign. That's actually a pretty good, because it does say then to bettors and players that this is the number, but the performance was better than maybe the number indicates.
Exactly, and I think that would be so helpful to the bettors.
Yeah.
So, but I've been advocating that for, I'd say at least 5 years, and maybe up somewhere between 5 and 10 years. And look, Andy Meyer was a revolutionary in many respects to come up with this. It's, it's very respected by horse players. That's why you use it in your toolbox. I use it in my toolbox, and But I think that would improve the buyers if they were to do that.
I like that. That's a good idea. All right, let's move on. Race number 7 on Saturday, the Rodeo Drive Grade 1 event, $300,000, 1.25 miles on the turf. And I pulled up the yellow ribbon. Bodhicitta will be the winner, the number 2 horse, and Tonahutu, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, the number 3, a close-up second. Since then, Tonahutu has come back and won an optional claimer as well. But I thought off of this Bodhicitta, the win in this yellow ribbon was one to take a look at on Saturday. Lady Prancelot, coming off a close-up second-place finish in the Maybe, was also one that I found interesting as well. We were doing the handicappers report a little bit earlier, and my colleague Brian Edo thought Maxim Rate could be a little bit interesting also, with Luis Saez out there in Southern California on Saturday afternoon. What are your thoughts on the Rodeo Drive?
Well, we certainly don't have a 2-5 favorite in this race. This is a pretty competitive group here.
Yeah.
You articulated it well, Seth. I mean, you touched on these horses. Plus, I would throw Mutual and Usual into the mix. You know, she's an honest, consistent Calbred that has held her own with this type of company. The tricky aspect of this race is the 1.25 miles, and it's the main reason I made Lady Prancelot the 2-1 morning line favorite, because she is a Grade 1 winner going 1.25 miles on the turf at Santa Anita. Now, that was the American Oaks late last year, so she was only facing 3-year-olds in that race. But still, the fact that she had the stamina to win that race on this turf course, plus she's coming off a good effort in the Grade 2 John C. Maybe at Del Mar. She came on willingly in that race and lost in the photo finish. And you also have the Rispoli factor going for her here. This guy is a tremendous rider, particularly on the turf. I mean, I will tell you, Seth, I was asked to be a jockey agent back in the early 1980s by Darryl McCarg, and I gave it serious consideration, but decided to stay with the Daily Racing Form. In all those years since then, the only jockey that I've been tempted to go to him and say, you know what, I would love to take your book and be your agent, is Rispoli. When he was going to change agents from Ron Anderson, when Ron Anderson had him originally here in California, and then took the book of John Velasquez to go along with Joel Rosario, and that left Rispoli open. And I'm such a believer in that guy that I really considered that, but I didn't consider it for long, Seth, because I'm a handicapper, and I handicapped that Scott McClellan was sitting out there without a jockey, and he's been one of the most successful and best jockey agents, not just in California, but that I've come across anywhere in the country. And I'm going, how could I possibly go to Rispoli and say, I want to be your agent, I should be your agent, when I know in my heart there's a better, more experienced agent out there for him to take? So that's how quickly I had to nip that in the bud. But this guy is a fabulous rider, and when you get a 1.25 mile race on the turf, Rispoli could win the race just himself, and he's certainly got the ammunition with Lady Prancelot.
Yeah, and I know Ron Anderson was quoted as saying it was a real thought process to go to New York and Velasquez and Rosario, as you say, and leave Rispoli behind, because he knew this was an up-and-coming rider out there. And boy, you know, we're here on the East Coast, so we're maybe a little more focused on that. But over the past few months, this guy has been making noise even out here as people talk about him. Rispoli.
And by the way, Seth, I will say Ron Anderson, I chatted with him this spring, and was mentioning how, I had considered maybe taking his book and so forth, and said, I immediately threw that out the window. This was after Scott McCullough had taken Rispoli's book. And so I was mentioning to Ron that Daryl McCarg had come to me to ask me to be his agent. And I explained to Ron that I came home and mentioned it to my wife, and she says, well, what happens if the jockey gets hurt? And I said, well, then there's nothing coming in. And she said, the look on her face told me immediately that there was not going to be any jockey agent work for me leaving the Daily Racing Form at that particular time. But Ron Anderson, interestingly, Seth, told me, he says, I think you made a big mistake. I think you should have gone into the agent business, and I think you would have been an outstanding agent. And that's a great compliment coming from an agent that is, without question, one of the premier jockey agents of all time. After all, he, won yet another Kentucky Derby this year with Authentic and Johnny V.
Yeah, Ron Anderson, certainly one of the all-time greats. So, yeah, when he says, hey, you would have been pretty good, I think you have to kind of buy into that. But I think you made a great decision as well. You could have gone either way, but we've appreciated your work as you've moved on in another direction. And part of that morning line odds out at Santa Anita, your online columns as well. And we'll get to that a little bit later because your most recent one talked about the Preakness, and I want to get some thoughts on that before we wrap up. But maybe playing into next year's Triple Crown, the American Pharaoh, Grade 1 event, race 8 on the Saturday card, $300,000, a mile and a 16th. Going to pull up the Del Mar Futurity. Dr. Schivel will be the winner here, the number 6, but running second, number 1, Spielberg. It is a Baffert horse. Luis Saez is going to jump on board on Saturday, and off this second place finish, probably going to take some action on Saturday. Notable exception for Jack Sisterton for off the win at Arlington in the career debut. Question mark there is the synthetic, but boy, had a pretty good workout at Keeneland on the main track there. Touchdown Brown, the Calbred, who ran pretty well and put in a good number as compared to this field last time. But I'm going to be interested to hear your thoughts here because I think this field, you could go in a few different directions, lightly raced. They have the chance to step up. But as compared to in New York, where we saw Jackie's Warrior just kind of look fabulous in the hopeful, I'm not sure things have shaken out on the West Coast beyond Dr. Schivel, perhaps, as far as the 2-year-olds. And I don't think anything's jumping off the page here. What are your thoughts on the American Pharaoh?
Well, that Jackie's Warrior, you said fabulous. I have to agree. I mean, wow, that was a tour de force without any question. And you're right. Certainly the 2-year-olds have looked much better in New York than they have so far this year in Southern California. And Dr. Schivel, winner of the Del Mar Futurity, he was sold privately after that and now is in the Ron Glatt barn. And it was announced this week at Brad Free reporting in the Daily Racing Form that Dr. Schivel will not race for the remainder of this year. They're going to give him time. There's nothing physically wrong, but they just feel like with a purchase like this, obviously they're thinking down the line to a race like the Kentucky Derby, and they feel like Dr. Schivel would benefit from just kind of letting him grow up a little bit here. I will throw as a side note here, Seth, that I've been running a fantasy horse racing league for 20 years, and the league has gone on for almost 40 years. And in this league is Brad Free, and I can only tell you how much news gets broken by people like the Jay Pribmans and Byron Kings and Brad Frees and so forth in my league of people following up on their horses, because Brad Free claimed Dr. Schivel in my fantasy league before the Del Mar Futurity and was obviously keeping close tabs on him, and then broke the story that the horse is out for the rest of the year. So I always chuckle a little bit how much my fantasy league causes news to be broken in this sport, and this was yet another example. Spielberg, a $1 million purchase at public auction, and I know Bob liked him a lot before his first race. He was the 4-5 favorite, and it doesn't look so bad now that he got beat by Dr. Schivel when Dr. Schivel came back and won the Del Mar Futurity. And Spielberg, it's interesting, I was reading where Bob Baffert is really thinking that Spielberg's going to appreciate the 2 turns, and he thinks he might really come up with a much better performance than we've seen so far. If that's the case, the rest of these could be in trouble. But that's a big if. That's kind of betting on the come, as they say. So And the tricky part of this race, like the Chandelier's, the distance, but at least we've got some horses in here with some experience in the 2 turns, like Get Her Number, which is one reason I made him the co-second favorite in the race, because he ran a good effort in the Del Mar Juvenile Turf at 1 mile. He was only beaten 1 length as the favorite in that race. So that's a pretty good effort. And even Rombauer, who I made 8-1, but he was not disgraced in that race. He only got beat 2 lengths. And so with Mike Smith aboard, I think he's kind of an interesting price possibility. You mentioned notable exception. I think he's going to get some play off that sparkling debut win on the synthetic at Arlington. He'll be stretching out from 7 furlongs to the mile and a 16th, but he's certainly got a dirt pedigree and a stretch-out pedigree. He's by Street Sense out of an AP Indy mare bred by Calumet Farm, owned by Calumet Farm, trained by Jack Sisterson, who was a former assistant to Doug O'Neill, and is a real up-and-coming trainer, I think, on the national stage. So I think Spielberg is the one to beat, but only, this is, you said you could go many different directions here. I think that is absolutely the case. Hence, I made Spielberg a lukewarm 3-1 favorite. I'm not even sure who's going to go favorite in this race. That if you're kind of juggling the balls here and trying to determine who might go favored, you might as well go with Baffert a lot of times, particularly with 2-year-olds and 2-year-olds in these stakes races like this, because Bamfort's won a whole flock of them during his career. In fact, he trained the horse that this race is named after, of course, the Triple Crown winner, American Pharoah.
Yeah, and finished second in a couple of starts to Dr. Scheibel, so we'll further flatter that one with a potential win on Saturday afternoon. A fun addition, as I say, of the American Pharoah to maybe sort things out a little bit, help sort things out on the 2-year-old scene on the West Coast beyond Dr. Scheibel. All right, let's move on to the John Henry Turf Classic, race number 9. And on the handicappers report a little bit earlier, we were looking at this race, and I noted, I said I remembered, I was dating myself, but I actually remember John Henry running at Saratoga in a claiming race. And subsequently, I looked it up because I was just curious the date and whatnot. I had it mistaken. He was in an allowance race at Saratoga, but a couple months earlier, he had been at a claiming race at Belmont Park. Clearly, both of those were before John Henry became John Henry, but I was a fan of the sport then and remembered those races back at Saratoga in the day, as I say, dating myself. But in this edition of the John Henry, we're going to take a look at the Eddie Reed back in July at Del Mar. Number 7 will be United. Subsequently came back and ran a close-up second in the Del Mar Handicap. But just off of this race, a couple of back, United looks potentially to be the one to beat in here. Originaire, I think, can be a player. Salvatore Mundi coming off an optional claiming win with a decent little number. Next Shares is probably interesting for Richard Baltus, Luis Saez on board. What are your thoughts on the John Henry?
Well, John Henry, you mentioned that name, brings back a lot of memories because I covered him extensively in the early 1980s. I had come to Southern California after working at tracks all over the country, from the Pacific Northwest to Bowie and Keystone and Sportsman's Park and Louisiana Downs, and was promoted by the Racing Forum to come to Southern California as a writer. And John Henry won the Hollywood Turf Invitational on May 17, 1981, the first time I ever saw him race. And why do I remember that race? Well, that's the day I met my future wife, Tracy Gantz, who was the editor of the Thoroughbred of California breeding magazine. And Randy Moss of NBC, I had become friends with him at Louisiana Downs in 1980, and he had said, I mentioned to him that I was moving to Southern California. He says, there's a girl you need to look up. I think you two would really hit it off. So I just want to say, Randy Moss is not only an outstanding handicapper when it comes to racehorses, but he's an outstanding handicapper when it comes to humans, because I've been married to this woman now since 1983. And in fact, I can tell you who won the race before John Henry was Me Good Man, who I'd covered at Louisiana Downs in 1980 for Mike Stidham. And that was a young Mike Stidham just getting kind of started in his training career. And I became good friends with Mike Stidham, who now is a really top trainer and has a Mystic Guide as a possibility for the upcoming Preakness Stakes. So a lot of memories there. And how about where I met my wife, Seth, Hollywood Park? Well, that's now the home of the Los Angeles Rams and the Los Angeles Chargers. a $5 billion stadium built on the site where I had met my wife in 1981. So, as I say, I could go on and on about John Henry and all the many, many memories I have of him. What a great gelding he was. I still say the fact that he was Horse of the Year in 1984 at the age of 9, to see a 9-year-old Horse of the Year is something that we very, very likely will never see ever again. And that's a credit to Ron McAnally and the fabulous job he did training John Henry. As far as this race, I mean, United is going to be a heavy favorite. I made him 6-5. He could possibly go even shorter than that. Wouldn't surprise me, but I didn't want to. If you make him lower, then I've got to raise prices elsewhere. I didn't really feel comfortable doing that. Originaire, you mentioned him. I've been a big Originaire fan forever, and he just doesn't seem to really get bet in these stakes races. He was 10-1 in that Del Mar handicap against Red King and United, and he had a troubled trip there. There's a compelling case that with any kind of better racing luck, he would have won that race. And, he's the value play because I think he'll be 3-1, 7-2, 4-1 in that area. I made him 7-2. And, but United, you have to give a lot of respect to because he didn't have the best of trips in the Del Mar handicap either. I'm friends with Derek Lawson, who is the agent for Flavian Pratt, and they were very frustrated that United got beaten a photo in that race, and it basically stemmed from him breaking from the inside rail and never really getting comfortable in that race after breaking from the inside post. So don't forget how well United ran in the Breeders' Cup Turf here at 51-1 last fall, getting beat ahead by the Horse of the Year, Bricks and Mortar. So United really kind of is a standout, but as I say, I would not single him in this race, quite honestly. I would certainly use Originaire as well.
Yeah, interesting addition of the John Henry, and that's a great story. As I say, I remember him up at Saratoga before he became John Henry. But while you were talking, I pulled up the Equibase page, and for folks who don't remember John Henry, and there's probably people in the audience who are young enough that they don't, 83 starts, 39 wins, 15 seconds, 9 thirds, $6.5 million, and again started the career as a claimer and then kept going, as you say, to well into the age that we just don't see horses run like that anymore. A lot of fun, and I will have to bring that up next time I have Randy Moss on. I'll ask you. I had Randy on. I had probably a month and a half or so ago. It was during the Saratoga meet. We had him on via Zoom one morning. It may have been before the Travers. We were talking 3-year-olds perhaps, but he had posted a few weeks before. Did you see the video? He pulled out. He had what must have been a Super 8 movie from years ago, and he said it was my first time. Here's a video of my first time at Oaklawn Park, and it's his pregnant mother. And he said he had looked at the tote board because the film showed the tote board afterwards, and he had to go back in newspapers of the day and kind of match up what showed on the tote board for the results to the results in the paper. And so he found the exact day, and he realized his mother was pregnant with him at the time. So it was his first visit to Oaklawn Park.
Well, that's a fantastic story. That's really interesting. I became, he and I really hit it off at the 1980 Louisiana Downs meet, and that was a big meet because Louisiana Downs had just put in a turf course, and there were no turf courses really throughout the Midwest. Pretty much the only other one was Arlington because there were no turf courses in New Orleans. Texas was not racing. Kentucky didn't have any turf courses yet. I mean, you had to go to Arlington or Florida pretty much for the nearest turf course. So that was a big deal, but then it was also the first Super Derby, which was a $500,000 race in 1980, and Temperance Hill won that race coming off of the Jockey Club Gold Cup in New York. And in fact, we talk about John Henry. Temperance Hill beat John Henry. Temperance Hill is a 3-year-old in that Jockey Club Gold Cup, and Temperance Hill ended up being the champion 3-year-old male that year. He'd won the Arkansas Derby, he'd won the Belmont Stakes, he'd won the Travers, and he'd won the inaugural Super Derby. Unfortunately, and it's sad to me, the Super Derby just really is kind of fallen off the map. Louisiana Downs just really is not the current group there they're not interested in keeping it as a top race in the country. And the race that really took the place of the Super Derby on the calendar was the Pennsylvania Derby in terms of its timing and its huge purse. Fortunately, there's no Pennsylvania Derby this year because of COVID-19. But like I say, I've got a soft spot in my heart for that Super Derby because in its early years, I mean, it was won by, for instance, Sunday Silence, who used that as a springboard to his victory over his arch rival Easy Goer in the 1989 Breeders' Cup Classic. The showdown for Horse of the Year honors that particular year.
Yeah, you're right. It has kind of disappeared, which is unfortunate because it had for a while it had a unique spot on the calendar and was a fun race for quite a while. People can look up the results there. As you say, the winners include some very prominent names going back a ways. All right, let's go to the finale as far as the graded stakes competition on Saturday at Santa Anita. A lot of focus will be on race number 10 because of Improbable and Maximum Security. And I pulled up, just because I'm a homer up here at Saratoga, the Whitney from earlier this summer. Number 2 will be Improbable. Nice victory. Now, part of it was due to Tom's Day Todd had a little trouble at the start, but Improbable takes advantage, and we can see gets it done here. The eventual chart margin, a couple of lengths. Subsequent to that, Maximum Security came back in the Pacific Classic and also put in an impressive performance. The two Baffert runners face off Saturday afternoon. Your thoughts in the Awesome again?
Well, it really boils down to the powerful Baffert duo here that you're talking about, Maximum Security and Improbable. They've met once before, and that was in last year's Kentucky Derby, the very controversial Kentucky Derby, in which Maximum Security was disqualified for causing interference on the far turn and placed 17th. He was not the favorite in that race. Improbable was the 4-1 favorite, and Maximum Security was the 9-2 second choice. But, it was Maximum Security who crossed that finish line first. And, in fact, only one time in 12 career starts has Maximum Security not crossed the finish line first. And that was when he stumbled at the start and was upset by King for a Day in the Pegasus at Monmouth Park, and on a very hot day at Monmouth in the summer of 2019. And Bob Baffert was very confident that Maximum Security would improve off his narrow victory in the San Diego Handicap. And here again, Baffert, when he says something, you better pay attention. And he was right, because Maximum Security did run much better in the Pacific Classic. He went from a 101 buyer to a 107, and he went from barely beating midcourt to drilling midcourt. So you take a horse of this kind of ability and heart and determination and give him to a trainer like Bob Baffert, wow, that's a powerful combination. So Maximum Security, he was the 2-5 favorite in the San Diego. He's the 2-5 favorite in the Pacific Classic. I made him the 3-5 favorite here. Partly because, and I'll take all factors into consideration when making a morning line, anything that could affect the price. And Maximum Security is much more of a name horse right now than Improbable. As far as current form, I think they're pretty close. Maybe you could make the case that Improbable's last couple of races are at least equal, or if not better, than the Maximum Security's Pacific Classic. But as far as the betting, when you're talking about the number 1 ranked horse in the country in the NTRA weekly poll, and a horse that has been on the lips of so many people ever since that Kentucky Derby, not to mention just his record, as I say, officially he's 10 for 12, but he's only been beaten across the finish line one time. And don't forget, he won the world's richest race, the richest race on the planet, a $20 million race in his first start of the year. So I think he's the horse to beat. He's the type of horse that, while I respect Improbable, I'd still have to stick with Maximum Security as far as winning the race. But I don't think I would want to single Maximum Security and get beat by Improbable, because his form is just too good right now. And he's always been highly regarded, and he just seems to have really matured into a real effective equine athlete right now. And that win in the Hollywood Gold Cup, and kudos to Santa Anita and their current management for, taking the name of the Gold Cup and making it back to the Hollywood Gold Cup, because for many years, those of us in Southern California, if not the nation, That's what we knew that race as, the Hollywood Gold Cup. And then when Hollywood Park closed and Santa Anita took over the race, they made it the Gold Cup at Santa Anita. That just didn't really sit well with many of us. And so it was fantastic, I thought, that they took the name and made it back to the Hollywood Gold Cup. And Improbable was very impressive that day, and he was even more impressive in that Whitney win. So he's been working well, and he's on the top of his game. And, the kind of wild card in the race, and I don't know how much he's going to get bet. I might have made him too big of a price at 12, but I just think the Baffert horses are going to just get bet so heavily here that they pushed me up to making Sleepy Eyes Todd 12. He could go lower than that. And, he's got the 102 buyer, but you have to remember that was at Charlestown on a bull ring, meaning a track that's less than 1 mile in circumference. And, who did he really, he beat a decent field there, but nothing of the ilk that you saw Improbable drilling in the Whitney of horses like By My Standards and Tom's the Tot, horses like that. So I think he's really stepping up here quite a bit off of that Charlestown race. But you know what? He's kind of an improving horse. Look at his buyer pattern. He's running better and better and better. So he's kind of, a wild card in the race. But I'm not going to go against Maximum Security myself. He's kind of what the definition when you look at a horse and you say he's a win machine. That's been Maximum Security so far. He has absolutely been a win machine.
Yeah, and I think as a racing fan, we were hoping that given the situation when he moved into the Baffert barn, he would continue to validate his talent, and he's done that so far. So looking forward to see that continue perhaps on Saturday, but he'll have his hands full with Improbable. John, before we let you go, always like to talk to 3-year-olds with you in the Triple Crown Trail. Didn't think we'd be doing it at the end of September on the verge of October, but the Preakness is coming up next weekend, and wanted some thoughts there. Before we do that, though, going to pull up the stretch run to the Kentucky Derby. We're going to watch number 18 over number 18 Authentic over number 17 Tis the Law. I think for us who were able to watch that, I was sitting live at the racetrack. I was lucky enough to be at Saratoga throughout the meet up in the press box. And I think for those of us that watched the Travers, we kind of felt like, given the top of the stretch, Tis the Law was going to go right by. But Authentic has some more gas in the tank, and as we can see here, pulls away to win by a little over a length. Tis the Law well clear of the third place finisher. So it wasn't a bad performance by Tis the Law, but Authentic kind of proved the naysayers wrong coming out of that Haskell, where folks were kind of questioning whether he'd make the distance. Had the race kind of pan out in his favor, where he was able to lead them all the way around, but he got it done. Give us your impressions of the Kentucky Derby before you move on to the Preakness.
Well, Seth, you mentioned how the situation looked at the top of the lane in the Kentucky Derby, and there are some places in the world that you can make bets during a race. And I wish, in a way, I'd been operating a book and taking money on people betting during the Kentucky Derby, because I'd say 95 to 98% of the money that would have been bet for who's going to win the Kentucky Derby at the top of the lane would not have been on Authentic. It would have been on Tis the Law. I mean, he looked like as much of a cinch based on his form this year and the trip he had gotten. He moved up willingly to Authentic, and there was such a question about Authentic at the 1.25 mile distance, whereas there was no question about that with Tis the Law, because he had won not only the Travers, but won it so impressively by 5.5 lengths. Yeah. I mean, that's really proven you're good at a 1.25 miles. The one lingering doubt, and people kind of poo-pooed it, but the fact that, Tis the Law, his one defeat in his career previously had come at Churchill Downs. Now, it was on a sloppy track, and he'd had a bad trip that day, but still, when the hole opened during the stretch run that day, he did not have the acceleration that I think most people expected from him, including his outstanding trainer, veteran Barclay Tagg. And but Tis the Law had improved so much since that race, and had trained so nicely, and his record was just so sterling coming into the Kentucky Derby. I mean, like I say, at the top of the stretch, when there was such a question about Authentic being able to get the distance of 1.25 miles, after barely eking out a nose win in the Haskell at 1 1/8 and losing the Santa Anita Derby by a clear margin to Honor AP at 1 1/8. But this was one of the all-time training jobs by an all-time great trainer in Bob Baffert, because after the Haskell, Baffert took Authentic back to Del Mar, and this was just a clinic in how to prepare a horse to run as well as Authentic did in the Kentucky Derby. And what was most notable to me, and it really jumped off the page, how many times have you ever seen Bob Baffert work a horse 1 mile? And that's a page out of Charlie Whittingham's book. That's how Charlie Whittingham used to prepare a horse for the Santa Anita Handicap at 1 1/4 or the Hollywood Gold Cup at 1 1/4. And I'll tell you one thing about Bob Baffert. He was stabled next to Whittingham when Baffert was starting out in the thoroughbred game after moving over from the quarter horses. And Bob Baffert is a very astute and sharp observer. And he watched Whittingham like a hawk. He watched other trainers like Richard Mandela and Laz Barrera, a couple more that he's mentioned to me that he watched like hawks. But there were many others too, but especially Whittingham, because to me, Whittingham is the greatest trainer I've ever been around. So that was very shrewd on the part of Baffert to really study, and I mean seriously study, everything that Whittingham did. And this was a page right out of Whittingham's book, what Baffert did to prepare Authentic for the Kentucky Derby. And as far as looking ahead to the Preakness, well, Bob Baffert has won the Preakness 7 times, and that's he's tied with a gentleman from way back in the day that also has 7 Preakness wins. When Baffert won the Derby with Authentic, he tied Ben Jones for the most Kentucky Derby wins, now with 6. And so Baffert's attempting to become the sole leader in terms of Preakness wins by a trainer. He'll get his 8th if Authentic wins it, and Authentic will be favored to win the race. But look at what Baffert has done with his 5 previous Kentucky Derby winners coming back in the Preakness. The record, 5 for 5. All 5 of Bob Baffert's previous Kentucky Derby winners came right back and won the Preakness. Now, in those cases, of course, it was the 2-week turnaround. Now it's a 4-week turnaround. But again, we're talking about a trainer that has just put together one of the Triple Crown resumes that is second to none. He's the leader in Triple Crown race wins, Bob Baffert. And Authentic is, to me, clearly the one to beat. He had just a real sharp 5-furlong drill last Saturday at Churchill. Now, the horse he's got to beat is Art Collector, who's 4 for 4 this year, and also had a sharp workout at Churchill last Saturday. It was only 1/5 slower than Authentic, so both horses look good in those workouts. And so I think Authentic will win the Preakness, but I certainly respect Art Collector. And if anybody knocks off Authentic, I think it will be Art Collector. And one more thing about the training job Bob Baffert's done with Authentic. If you go back and look at Authentic in the Sham Stakes earlier this year at Santa Anita, this horse, he lugged in so badly ducked in so badly at one point during the stretch run, I thought he was going to hit the rail or go over the rail. And then he veered out, and then he ducked in again. Ever since then, that horse has raced with earplugs. Bob Baffert has put earplugs in this horse, and I think it's been a real good training job by Baffert to take this horse. He's a late foal, so that's been a point that Authentic is, I think, a horse that it makes sense that he's going to improve as the year went on because he was a late foal. But also it's been a plus for Authentic that he hasn't had to race before huge crowds. Look at what he did in the winner's circle after the Kentucky Derby when he knocked Baffert, where he caused Baffert to fall to the ground. Authentic is kind of a keg of dynamite. He's capable of doing anything at any time, and yet Baffert has harnessed all that energy and was able to get him ready to run well enough to win the 1 1/4 Kentucky Derby. Just another really unbelievable training job by Bob Baffert. And considering Baffert's never lost a Preakness with a Kentucky Derby winner, I'm not about to start forecasting that it'll happen this year with Authentic. So I'm on the Authentic bandwagon in the Preakness, with all the respect, though, to Art Collector, who I think looms the real main threat to Authentic.
Yeah, until I read your online column, I hadn't really realized or thought about it. But Baffert record going Derby to Preakness, you can't beat the 100%. And so
That's right.
Yeah, Authentic comes in looking very, very good. But I'm with you. I'm going to be excited to see what Art Collector can do. It was really unfortunate, given the connections and whatnot. They had to have an excitement level to the moon to have them wind up a little ding and miss the Derby. But I'll be interested to see what Art Collector does. It's going to be a lot of fun next week. Jon, as always, appreciate the conversation. Always a lot of fun, always entertaining and informative. Wish you and everybody out in Southern California good luck on this opening weekend at Santa Anita with the big Breeders' Cup Stakes card. Again, appreciate the conversation, and we will talk again.
Thanks a lot, Seth. Always great talking racing with you. Take care.
Appreciate it. Jon White from Santa Anita.
No matter where in the world you are, the excitement of wagering on horse racing is just a click away. You'll get live streaming, past performances, race replays, our virtual tote board, analysis and selections from professional handicappers, a simple, safe, and secure wagering platform, and best of all, you get track prices. CapitalOTBBet.com. Bet any place, anytime at CapitalOTBBet.com. And be sure to download our new mobile app from the iTunes Store or Google Play. In a recent study of some of the top online wagering sites, Capital OTB won big in total player rewards, far surpassing some of the best-known wagering sites in America. While other rewards programs simply offer you points redeemable for gift cards, Capital OTB's rebates are paid to you in actual cash. Plus, Capital OTB gives you full and immediate access to your money. So if all you're getting now are points and gift cards, join Capital OTB Player Rewards today and get cash back. Visit CapitalOTBBet.com and sign up today.
The New York hero, Tiz the Law, and Manny Franco to win the Belmont Stakes.
When New York bred Tiz the Law won the 2020 Belmont Stakes, OTB TV was live with owner Jack Nolan to capture all the excitement.
But certainly, seeing what he did today, we think a mile and a quarter is well within his range, and hopefully he can prove it at Saratoga Racecourse.
For exclusive interviews and racing information, stay with Capital OTB and OTB TV and win more. Happy to be joined now by our friend Chris Sobocinski from Delaware Park. They have a nice day coming up on Saturday, nice stakes-laden card, and some nice full fields in there as well. Wanted to talk a little bit about that. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Seth. Thank you for having me this morning.
Happy to have you. And before we get into some of the stakes specifically, let's just give an overview on the day itself. This is Delaware Owners Day, correct?
Yes, and it's the 28th time we've had Owners Day. And it's a tradition that was started 28 years ago, obviously. And it was started to contribute, or to say thank you to the owners for everything that they've done to contribute to Delaware racing. And it's turned into a day where we can really highlight and showcase the best of Delaware racing. And we're pretty proud of the card we put on tomorrow. We got 11 races. I think 122 horses are entered. And we have 6 stakes races. And all those races seem very competitive, and they got some really nice horses in those races.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted you on, because I didn't want this to float under the radar for our viewers. There are, and these are, some of the stakes are restricted to Delaware bred or certified. The other stakes are for horses who have been racing at Delaware. But these kind of days around the country tend to bring together stakes races like this, which have, as I said earlier, some big and competitive fields. So I think there'll be some fun opportunities for people on Saturday. Why don't we take a look at some of the stakes action? Kicks off in race 4 with the tax-free distaff. Again, Delaware bred or certified filly and mare, 3-year-olds and up. They're going to go 6 furlongs. And while we talk, I pulled up a Laurel Park race from early in September. The winner will be number 5, 15 Royals. Mike Trombetta is going to bring this one in. And I thought off of this performance, this horse was interesting. But Pink Caddy off the 2 races down at Parks most recently with good buyers. Madam Mina also coming in from Parks is interesting. And from Delaware, Dancer's Melody for Tim Ritchie is a player as well. What are your thoughts on the tax-free?
Those are the 3 that are definitely the top 3 contenders. Pink Caddy is coming into the race as the only stakes win in the field. She's won 2, and she actually won an Owner's Day stake last year, the Small Wonder, so got that under her belt. And then Dancer's Melody, trained by Tim Ritchie. He's having an outstanding meet, high percentage trainer, always has his horses ready to run, gets the leading rider Carol Cedeno and Dancer's Melodies won his last two. And Madam Nina, trained by the leading trainer at Delaware Park, Jamie Ness, she has the most victories coming into this race with 5 and 2 seconds in the third. Never run at Delaware Park, but she's definitely going to be a factor. Now, I can never let a race go by without picking a live long shot. So I'm going to go with number 5, Quiet Imagination, as my long shot. I'm thinking maybe this horse will get a pace scenario that will be favorable for her to run at maybe some tiring leaders, and maybe at a price she'll throw a mild upset.
I like that.
Skipped Alex Cintron too, who's a good rider.
I'm getting 8-1 on 15 Royals, though. So I'm kind of, and I like Trombetta, so I have to admit, I was kind of pulled in that direction.
You can never go wrong with Trombetta at Delaware Park. As a matter of fact, I've said this to you once before about I do the morning line odds. There was a Trombetta first-time starter last week that I made 5-2 just because he's a high percentage trainer. He's good with 2-year-olds. He went off 7-1 and won. So.
Gotta like that.
You can never go wrong with Trombetta.
We had him up here at Saratoga, obviously, with win in the Forgo. Did you catch that race by any chance? That was one of the best races up here at Saratoga this year. In the slop, and Trombetta, we were interviewing after the race, and he said, my little Chicklet went completely off the screen. I didn't think I stood a chance. I don't think anybody did, but the horse came from under the clouds for a nice win for Trombo.
That's awesome. That is great. That's what makes the sport so awesome.
Yeah, it was, as they say.
And like you said, anytime Trombetta sends a horse to the races, that horse has got a shot. He's live.
Yeah, like they say, that was one of the more fun races up there. But I think that horse in the tax-free is live for Mike Trombetta. But we'll turn the page now to the Small Wonder. You mentioned that in the last race is a race that one of the horses won last year, and that was because it's restricted to 2-year-old fillies, the Small Wonder, and that's part of what makes a day like this so much fun. A couple of the 2-year-old races have some promise for next year as well. But while we talk, I'm going to pull up the maiden claimer from Laurel and take a look at juror number 4. I love Into Mischief runners to begin with as being win early types, and this was start number 2 for juror number 4. Coming out of this victory, I think this horse is a little bit interesting, but Plain Drunk for Phil Schoenthal coming out of the win, Maiden Breaker at Parks. Tactical Pajamas, I love the name, won the career debut at Presque Isle. Heart Full of Soul is interesting, coming in from Canterbury off a stakes victory, and Street Loot from a Maiden Breaker in the debut at Delaware. This is a fun race. These 2-year-old races always are, but a nice full field of 12 in here. Your thoughts on the Small Wonder?
Every horse you mentioned, I agree with. I actually had an opportunity to speak to Brittany Russell, trainer of juror number 4, earlier in the week, and she told me the horse is coming back in 15 days, and she normally doesn't like to bring a horse back in 15 days, but this filly broke her maiden relatively easy, didn't take a lot out of her. And Brittany thinks that since it's a restricted race, this might be a really good spot for her. So Brittany's kind of excited about juror number 4. But I do think the horse to beat is number 10, Heart Full of Soul. He's trained by Mac Robertson, second leading trainer at Delaware Park. He's coming off a stakes victory. He's got 2 wins in a row. And Street Loot, trained by John Robb, the daughter of a street musician, was pretty impressive in breaking her maiden at Delaware Park, going 5 furlongs.
And should note also, Mac Robertson, as you say, a high percentage guy at Delaware, but with this one out at Canterbury, broke the maiden in the career debut, but the stakes win last time, that was against the boys.
That's true.
Yeah.
I also need to ask him why he sent a Delaware certified bred to Minnesota. And I'll tell you this is not that unusual for Mac to send a horse from Minnesota to Delaware, Delaware to Minnesota. He's done this occasionally, so they know what they're doing. So I would expect this horse to be ready to go.
Yeah, and as I say, beating the boys last time in a field of 6, legitimate field of 6, makes that one interesting. Fun race, as I say, a field of 12 should be the potential to have some value in there. A couple of smaller stakes in the middle of the card, but we'll turn the pages and keep going to the 100 granders because there are 400 grand stakes that bookend a couple of smaller purse stakes, which also are fun and with big fields. But on the 100 grand side, we turn the page now to race number 8, the Newcastle. Again, Delaware bred or certified 3-year-olds and up, going 6 furlongs. Field of 10 in here. And while we talk, we're going to take a look at an optional claimer, allowance optional claimer from the middle of August down at Delaware. The number 7 here will be Golden Candy. Carol Cedinho on board for the win. This was the second win in a row, so she'll be looking for 3 in a row on board Golden Candy on Saturday afternoon. But So Street is interesting. Aspect is interesting. 3s over Deuces. And Where She Told Me to Go could be a player also coming in from Laurel for Brittany Russell. What are your thoughts on the Newcastle?
Definitely like Golden Candy at a nice price. Trained by Tony Pecoraro, who's the 3rd leading trainer. Ridden by Carol Cedinho. You can't go wrong with those connections. Horse has won his last 2 and done it very nicely. The horse that I have that's the morning my favorite in the race is the Gary Capuano trained 3 over Deuces, coming off of that 3rd place race in the Polynesian. And the horse I have ranked as the second choice is Where She Told Me to Go, who finished 4th in that race. And when I spoke to Brittany about this horse, she said she really thought he needed the race, and she's expecting him to move up off of this effort. The other thing, too, about Where She Told Me to Go, too, is hasn't raced at Delaware this year, but he's got 4 starts at the track, 3 wins in his second, and he's a multiple stakes winner, so he can be dangerous.
Yeah, I'm looking at that Delaware record, little horse for a course angle perhaps in there. Again, nice full field of 10 in the Newcastle that, again, will offer some opportunities. Mentioned it before, the 2-year-olds, always a lot of fun, and there's always the potential for value there because they're lightly raced. Somebody can step up and really make some noise. Field of 12 scheduled in race 9, the first state dash, 5.5 furlongs for the 2-year-olds. While we talk for this one, pulled up an August 26th race from Delaware. It'll be number 7, New Year's Block Party, getting it done. This was win number 2. The 2 wins bookend a decent little 3rd place finish in the Tyro over at Monmouth, but 2 for 2 otherwise at Delaware for New Year's Block Party. But I also thought Singlino was going to be interesting off the maiden breaker. It was back in July in a waiver claimer, but I thought that one at a price could be a player. And May the Horse Be With You, the great name from another Brittany Russell runner for Michael Dubb and Company, was intriguing to me as well. That one was 5th in the race we just looked at, but I think off of the maiden breaker that started the career, this horse is better than that 5th place finish last time. What are your thoughts on the first state dash?
Brittany Russell echoed those exact words. As a matter of fact, when she told me the day of the race, he wasn't himself. He can be quite an ornery horse who has a lot of energy, and she said he just seemed a little bit too quiet. She kind of dismissed it and still sent him over to the races. And she's pretty sure that the reason why he had a little bit of the reason why he didn't run the way he was expected to was because maybe it just wasn't his day. She said since then he's been on his toes. He's been as ornery as he's ever been, and they're adding blinkers to help him focus a little bit because he sounds like one of those kids that is all over the place. He might have ADHD or whatever that's called, but he sounds like he's a really talented colt. And I know Brittany really likes him. The horse I think to beat in the race is, like you said, New Year's Block Party. He has those 2 victories at Delaware. He's trained by Tony Pecoraro, who's had an outstanding meet this year with 2-year-olds, and he gets jockey Brian Pedroza. The other interesting thing, going back to May the Horse Be With You, the theme of the day for Owners Day, every year they come up with a theme, and the owners group here at Delaware Park has done a phenomenal job making this a really fun day. The theme of the day is Star Wars. And if there was ever a horse to bet according to a theme of the day, it's May the Horse Be With You. Maybe I think it was just a coincidence that the horse is named May the Horse Be With You, and the theme of the day is Star Wars. But maybe somebody's trying to tell us something.
I like that. The Hunts play working on that one as well. Chris, before we let you go,
his nickname in the barn too is Luke Skywalker.
Well, yeah, then you got to put a couple of bucks on, though. Yeah, absolutely. Before we let you go, just want to get a little update. You're well into the Delaware season. Obviously, I pulled up some stats from Equibase earlier today, looking at the trainer and the jockey side. Jamie Ness on top on the trainer side, and Carol Cedinho, who always rides so well down there on the jockey side. Fill us in, trainers and jockeys, for folks who maybe aren't following regularly. Who should we be watching?
Well, you know what's been neat? Over the years, Carol Cedinho and Jamie Ness have pretty much established themselves as being the top dogs at Delaware, and it's no surprise that they're on top again this year. But this season's been neat because, especially in the jockey ranks, we've added a couple of more names, and it's been a little bit more interesting, a little bit more competitive, a little bit harder for Carol to get some wins and get some of the better mounts. And one of those jockeys is Angel Suarez, who's second to Carol Cedinho. He's having a really solid meet. Anytime he gets on a horse, it seems like the horse is always in contention. And another one is Alexander Crispin. He's a relatively new guy. He's been having an outstanding meet. His approach to the races, I've noticed from the press box, he has a very cerebral, strategic approach with the horse. It's almost like, if I had to guess, he's probably reading the past performances and reading them really hard. He knows I'm pretty sure he knows everything his horse has the capability of doing. And another neat guy who's fourth in the standings is Jamie Rodriguez, who's been Jamie Ness's steady rider. So we've had a good little influx of some new jockeys, and it's really made the racing here at Delaware fun and interesting. And over on the trainer side, Mac Robertson is second. Mac Robertson has been at Delaware Park before. He hasn't been here for the last couple of years, and now he's returned this year. And he's making Jamie Ness work for his money a little bit. And then below that, we got the old standbys, Tony Pecoraro, Jose Cameo, and the former leading trainer, Scott Lake, all having really good, solid meets.
Yeah, it's always fun at Delaware with some familiar names. And Carol Cedinho, just fun to watch and see a female jockey year in and year out down there do as well as she's doing. So salute to her for another great season.
And she's a class act, too.
Yeah.
She's really... She plays hard and she stays humble.
Yeah, I've never had a chance to talk to her. I'll have to schedule that sometime and talk to her a little bit, because I think it would be worthwhile. Chris, as always, appreciate the visit. A little update, as I said, with the 6 stakes on the card, nice full fields. I thought I wanted to alert our viewers to the potential to maybe have some fun at Delaware on Saturday afternoon. So we appreciate the opinions. Always enjoy the conversation, and we will talk again.
Thank you, Seth. Have a good day. Good luck.
Appreciate it. Chris Sobocinski from Delaware Park. Thanks to our guests this morning. Again, we taped both of those yesterday, but happy to have Chris Sobocinski from Delaware Park and Jon White from Santa Anita, who both have some fun stakes days. Obviously, Delaware a little smaller, but I thought with the big fields there was some potential there to have some fun, maybe wagering. So I just wanted to alert people to that day at Delaware. But Santa Anita, big stakes action highlighted by Maximum Security versus Improbable in the Awesome again, but some great stakes action on the undercard as well out at Santa Anita. And again, we'll be back in here later this afternoon into this evening, focusing on that card on OTB Live. We'll have a bankroll, so between about 4 and 8. Mike Callahan will join me, so we'll bounce ideas back and forth looking at that Santa Anita card a little bit later today when I'm back for OTB Live. We'll be back for OTB Live in a couple hours or so to kind of kick things off on a Saturday afternoon that, again, will go a little bit later with an extended version today. So we look forward to you joining us then. But we appreciate your tuning in this morning for Racing Across America. Enjoy all the racing action this afternoon. And again, we'll see you in a couple hours for OTB Live.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.